I am Kevin Shirley. This is my studio where I mix a lot of records that I do, records and DVDs, stereo for both for records and the soundtracks of DVDs, and I always mix a unique 5.1 surround sound track as well. It's never a fold down from 5.1 to stereo. It's always a unique stereo and a 5.1, which is perfect application for this console. I didn't know what to do, and I went traveling around Europe to decide what to do with the rest of my life, and got thrown in prison and for 7 days. And when I came out, I heard music, and I thought, I really want to be involved in working with music and making records. In school, with classical music, mostly as a playing the French horn in an orchestra and as a conductor of an orchestra, of the junior orchestra. So I translated kind of well. 21, I went to work for a studio. And at 22, I produced my first records. There was in Cape Town a guy called Tully McCulley, an audio genius producer who worked down there. And I went to work with him for about 3 or 4 years before I became an independent, and have been ever since. First album I produced was a local guy called Robin Auld, and I have a copy somewhere. Someone sent me one. So I used to have one, maybe it's downstairs. And we ended up having a couple #1 records with the guy in South Africa. But it was the whole era of apartheid, and there was no trade between South Africa and anywhere else in the world. So I doubt you would have heard anything from that period. Mostly they come to you for mixes because they think that if you mix it, they'll get rich. But they're like, they're out of their minds. But you know. Yeah, I think that they like the records that you do. You know, I get a lot of emails and feedback from people that like the way records sound that you do. It's not all about obviously what I do. It's about the music and how it's being captured and how the music's being played. But I think it's I still think underneath all of that there is something about the spirit of the mix that resonates with different people. You know, some people just love the sound of pop music, and some people like the sound of, you know, gut bucket blues. That's what's so great about all of us, you know, whether it's hard rock or punk rock or classics. Everyone has an ear for one thing or another, and as mixers we have a presentation of music that's as different from one guy to the next. My first experience on an SSL was in Australia. I moved to Australia in 1986, and then I immediately started working on a 4000, and I haven't been off SSL since then, to be honest. My SSL introduction was no moving faders. Now I couldn't live without moving faders, to be honest. SSL has always been my preferred console for mixing. Definitely for the ease of working on a console, SSL was my, you know, was a choice. I have done a few records that I've mixed on an old 8068, and I love the way those things function. The reason why that's relevant is because I mixed one of the Joe Bonamassa albums on an Neva 8068, and I had a couple of tracks left over just as I had this installed in 2009. But it was the first time when I had recorded on an 8068, and I had mixed, you know, 3/4 of the album on an 8068, and then I couldn't get into that studio, and Phil had just put this console in here, and I came and I started fiddling, and I discovered the harmonic drivers in this console, and you would be hard pressed to tell me which was mixed on which console. I was absolutely knocked out. I was floored, actually. It was like I thought this is never going to sound as rough and meaty as the Neve, because these are much tighter, I think, and this is a chameleon of consoles. It can do all that stuff. This is one of the beauties of this instrument, is that, and it is an instrument. It's a musical instrument. You can, you know, you can, if you like the, you know, the fast attack parameters of a second harmonic distortion, then you can do that. And if you like the, you know, like the Neve slower third harmonic distortion, you get that as well. So I change it. You know, I don't run the whole console in one way. I definitely take it song by song. I definitely take it project by project. When I'm in a project, I generally like to get a workflow that has some degree of consistency to it, you know, because I don't think there's any sonic absolutes. I think you can do anything and it still sounds fine. You know, there were days when people said you could never have a, you know, a ringy snare drum, and then the Rolling Stones' Neighbours came out and the snare drum was ding, 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 and so there are sonic characteristics that I like to carry through in a project, but within that project, I definitely still approach it on a song-to-song basis and try and keep some kind of overall sonic vibe for the whole thing. I'm not an American Idol mixer. You know, there's a character to the mixes that comes from the person operating the console. It's not antiseptic, I don't think, the way that these things come out. Some people like that, some people don't, so that's fine. I have a swimming pool and a hot tub, and fuck 'em. I try and approach my productions from an entirely musical perspective. It's got very little to do with the technicalities of mixing. You can have a musical overview of the thing, and then the technical is just another aspect. You have to just find some way to try and dredge up what it was artistically that you had before. If you go and look at the records I've done, I always have separated them by two different credits, because I really can't stand the produced and engineered credit. Because to me, engineering in itself is the most basic of art forms. In the year dot, Telefunken designed a fantastic microphone that records good sounding instruments really well without you doing anything to it. So that's engineering to me. Take a microphone and a good instrument, put them together, and record it. That's engineering. That's not to say I don't have, you know, great respect for engineers and what they do, but that's the basic there, is having a good sounding instrument and capturing it well. The job of production is manifold, and there are so many different kinds of producers that operate in different ways, from personnel selection and controlling budgets to total artistic control, where things come out all sounding like the same. The craft of mixing is entirely different, once again, from engineering and producing and mixing. And the greatest exponents of the mixing for me are the guys that have operated this console, like the Clear Mountains of the world, and who's got to be the best, I think, in my mind. Because I like to. I like to use a console because I know where I'm going, I know where the car's parked, I know where the keys are, I know where the wheels are, I know where it is. I know where everything is. Doesn't mean to say I'm the fastest guy in the world or, you know, most technical, but it's easy for me to do. To operate a mouse or a trackball or something like that, even a DAW for me it just doesn't come from my heritage, from my advanced years in the business. And I don't especially like it. I don't like the way that it manipulates sound. Pro Tools or Logic are just storage systems. They're just tape machines, and this is where that stuff gets done. You know, I wouldn't prepare a feast in the bedroom, but I, you know, probably could. But you go to the kitchen. It's like, this is the kitchen right over here. This is where you cook the stuff. It's heart and it's soul, and it's a dream, and it's everything. I mean, all of those intangible moods are what music is for me. It's not a technical thing, and somehow you have to use technical to get those things out of music. You know, if you record instruments well and fairly basically, you allow yourself the ability to rectify them when you get to this point, and enhance them and compress them and gate them and de-ess them and create whatever it is that you want for your palette. Mixing a record or mixing a concert is still as creative in a different way as the performers have put on there. Give the same set of tracks to 10 different mixes and you're going to come up with an entirely different way that the presentation is mixed. You can give Eric Clapton a gut string or an electric guitar, and it's still Eric Clapton. Bonamassa, Jimmy Page, any of these guys could pick it up, and they sound entirely different on exactly the same guitar. So, it's in that way, it's our musical instrument. It's how you caress that sound out of your head and commit it to a mix down. I was looking at the new consoles and old consoles, and wondering what my application was gonna be and how far I could push that application. And it went from being a project studio to being, fully fledged production studio, only with adding the console into the mix, because all of a sudden I'm able to do full SSL mixes on this console. That is every SSL ever, as far as I can tell, apart from the fact that your bus matrix has now moved to become a digital display, and you don't have all those huge 48 bus switches up there and the little fader. Other than that, I think everything else is in there, from the the 9000 and the 4000 to this, and you have the added ability to do full surround sound mixes on here. I still think that I was undersold the console, because I think it's a much better console than I was led to believe it was. I think it's like a really astounding console. I think it's an astounding tool. I generally don't have people attending anymore, because I mix for everyone all over the world, whether it's England or Portugal or Brazil or Australia, and then I'll send them either an MP3 or a WAV file of the mix, and just time and time again I just get back, sounds good here, sounds good here. That's the full complement of the feedback I get from a band of 5 or 6 people, and so the console's working. It really is doing more than I thought it could do, and more than I expected it to do. For me is the automation. I love the simplicity of it. I love coming into my studio in the morning and not having an assistant and turning on the console myself every day. I turn it on and off every day. They used to say it was bad to do, but I turn it on and off every day. And I can start up a mix, and then I just turn the automation on, and it goes from get-go. Before, it was always a multitude of commands, and this is what's going to happen, and this mode and that mode. Now it's just like, okay, just push a button and off you go. And you just start it up and do something, turn back and play it, and it's there. So the automation for me is fantastic, in as much as I have limited understanding of the all the functions of it. But for me, it works perfectly. So many sonic capabilities and choices with this console, and that's mostly what a console for me is. It's about the musicality of stuff, and I would just show people how musical it can be and how easy it can be that musical. Kid Rock was going to buy a competitive system for the name and supposed analog advantages they had. I said, just come up, let me show you what my console can do. And he came up here, and I showed him about the harmonic drivers and about the automation. There was a 5-minute demonstration, and I do believe he bought one the next day. Well, it's like asking a guitar player to play a solo string by string. They interact with, when you do a mix, instruments interact with each other, and if you're using compression, and even if you're not using compression, the way that frequencies interact with each other plays a role in the way your second harmonics and third harmonics and that are evacuated from the speakers, and when you separate them, you don't have that interaction. It's the same as people suggesting that if you turn the spring reverb of your amp, you have a much better, you know, ability to add reverb on the console. But the truth is, it's an entirely different beast. You know, one is a tiny little metal spring that's being thudded with this signal, and then it's coming back through a speaker. And the other is this pristine digital algorithm that's, you know, that's somehow supposed to replicate that, and they just don't. If a guitar player likes to have an effect on his guitar, why would you take it off him? When I do get sessions, everyone prints like the line out of the guitar. What does that do? What do I want that for? It's like, you know, the guitar is important, the amplifier is important. They all, the sound of it is what makes the guitar player interact notes to notes or feel, or, you know, it's a strange turn this business takes when you want to antiseptic everything, antisepticize everything, so it becomes, you know, totally homogenized. It doesn't make any sense to me why you would take the character out of music, why you would quantize, and it doesn't make any sense to me. There's no heart in there. Since I met Joe Bonamassa and have been actively involved in being a creative part of what he does, and helping him see through all of these projects that he sees through, it's been astounding to have the capabilities of this console. I mean, really, it sounds like I'm doing the sell, but I'm really not. It's been amazing to do this, because I've been able to say, you know, we can go and do these shows at the Royal Albert Hall, and we can mix them here, and we can finish them up here, and we get to do so much more. And it's given me, you know, now we put a video edit suite in the room next door. Now we shoot the concerts, and you know, when we can edit the concerts, and we can have this interaction between editing and mixing. And instead of you getting an edit and then mixing to the edit, or getting, you know, a mix and then having to edit to the mix, which are just absolute compromises all the time, because, you know, all of a sudden you have someone featured on the picture and you haven't got it in the mix. So having, you know, being able to have this console, and therefore being able to, you know, reference the shooting and editing of videos, has just been, it's been like a godsend. You know, it's been astounding.